I will now call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the final agenda.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from the July 20th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. We are now moving on to our discussion items. Our first discussion item is on our agenda tonight is item 3.1, preliminary plat and zoning for the shores of Marsh Lake development. This item does include a public hearing. Before opening the public hearing, I will now turn it over to Community and Economic Development Director Marty Dole for staff presentation. Director Dole?
Chair, members of the commission, thank you. Yes, before you this evening is a application for preliminary plat as well as review of zoning for the shores of Marsh Lake development. So just a little bit of background on this item. March 1st of this year, a neighborhood meeting was held. Individuals within 350 feet of the property were invited to participate and provide feedback. That feedback was shared with you and the Planning Commission during the sketch plat process, which this commission heard on March 16th. And the City Council heard on March 22nd. Since then, the applicant and the property owner has petitioned and been approved for annexation. So the property we are discussing currently is now currently within the city limits of Victoria as of July 15th, 2021. And again, before you is a preliminary plat and zoning application. Chair, as you mentioned, there is a public hearing that will be required with this item. So as you may recall, this property is located just south of Marsh Lake Road and east of County Road 43 in the area just north of Marsh Lake. You can see the adjacent property owner shown on your screen in front of you. The proposal includes 42 single-family lots on approximately 39 acres. Of that 39 acres, approximately 14.2 are developable, which yields 2.95 units per acre, which is in line with what the property is guided for in the city's comp plan of low-density residential. Currently, the parcel is used for agricultural purposes. There is grasslands and some significant tree stands. As was noted in your background packet, there were several trees that were removed prior to annexation, and this property is within a shoreland district, so is subject to the city's shoreland, let's say that 10 times fast, the city's shoreland district regulations. So here is the preliminary plat of the parcel. This was also included in your background packet, and as always, we can come back to this screen for any questions. So this property, again, is proposing a residential shoreland planned unit development, PUD. So with that, they are proposing a minimum lot area of 10,000 square feet, minimum lot width of 65 feet, a minimum lot depth of 160 feet, a side yard setback of 7.5 feet on each side, a front yard setback of 25 feet, a rear yard setback of either 30 or 50 feet. The reason for the difference is that the properties that have rear yards that are facing Marsh Lake have a 150-foot building setback to the ordinary high water line for the lake. We'll talk about this in a little more detail, but with the 100-foot riparian buffer that will be deeded to the city as part of this proposal, there would be an additional 50-foot rear yard setback for those lots, building setback. And then this development is proposing 5,000 square feet per lot for maximum impervious surface. Corner lots in this development are proposed to match the front yard setback of 25 feet on the street side. As I noted, there is 100 feet of the entire shoreline that would be dedicated to the city as a riparian buffer. Overall, the entire development yields approximately 18.8% impervious surface. And as you may recall from the sketch plat, there was originally a controlled access lot that was being proposed. That is no longer being proposed as part of this development. Looking at the way the property breaks down in outlots, so the outlots you can see highlighted in yellow would be those that are retained by the developer and or HOA. So there is a proposed HOA park in the center of the development. There are 2 small outlots that would be retained to be combined with future lots when the property on the left to the west, adjacent to the west, is developed. And then the areas outlined in blue would represent outlots that are to be deeded to the city. That includes that shoreline buffer as well as wetlands and ponding and additional area for right-of-way for a future potential expansion of Marsh Lake Road. So as I noted, this is in the shoreland district, so the development is required to meet the shoreland PUD requirements. As staff's review of that does seem to see that it meets those requirements for RSPUD. That's including the adequate density determinations and the tier breakdown for how many homes can be in each tier of the property. Another requirement is 50% total open space development-wide. This proposal includes 53% open space. And a third requirement of a shoreland PUD is that 70% of the shore impact zone be preserved. And as I noted, with that dedication of a 100-foot riparian buffer, 100% of the shore impact zone is proposed to be preserved. So just a highlight here when I talk about the tiers, many of you may remember this as we spent a lot of time updating our shoreland ordinance, but you can take a look at the calculations as to how it's determined how many lots can be yielded in each tier. The 4th column shows the lots that would be allowed based on the square footage, and the column on the far right shows the lots being proposed. There are a few buffers and screening items that are required as part of this development. So there are some double-fronted lots that would be adjacent, or rear yards adjacent to outlot that will become future right-of-way for Marsh Lake Road. The developer is proposing to adhere to the buffer planting requirements on a 40-foot buffer for double-fronted lots. And in addition, the developer is proposing to construct a berm along those properties. That berm does show in the current plans that it encroaches into what will potentially be the future right-of-way of Marsh Lake Road. So just a more technical discussion required between staff and the applicant just to make sure we understand all of the impacts of how that would play out in the future. Based on the tree replacement for the trees currently on the property, the applicant is required to replace 175 caliper inches, which is approximately 58 3-inch trees. They are proposing a total of 1,083 caliper inches, which is approximately 361 3-inch trees. That includes 84 lot trees, 92 boulevard trees, 154 berm and buffer trees, and 31 additional trees on the property. The comprehensive plan for this parcel does not call for a park on the property. By doing the calculation within code, this parcel with the number of lots proposed would yield 1.96 acres of required parkland, or approximately $205,800. Staff is proposing a reduction at this time of approximately $121,800 in right-of-way dedication credit for the right-of-way that is being dedicated for future Marsh Lake Road, which would reduce that proposed parkland dedication fee to $84,000. The applicant, as I mentioned, is also proposing a 1.79 acre HOA park, and that has been determined by staff not to be eligible for park credit, as it would be a private park only used by those residents within the development. You can see on the image in front of you the trails and sidewalks that are proposed for this development. The red line is a trail that's proposed between the 2 separated blocks, with the purple being the 6-foot concrete sidewalks. This property also includes 2 access points, one into each of the areas within the development. Lakeside Drive, an extension of Lakeside Drive, would be a full access into the larger portion of the development. The cul-de-sac into Shoreview Point would be a full access as well, but it would be intended to be a right-in, right-out in the future if Marsh Lake Road becomes a county road, and that is something that staff's indicated should be included in any disclosures for future property, or for property owners that may change in the future. As was noted, there is adequate right-of-way that is being proposed to be dedicated for future Marsh Lake Road expansion and realignment. That is outlots C, D, and E, as are highlighted on your screen. The applicant is also working with the adjacent property owner to the west to potentially extend the cul-de-sac into that property for future development. The fire chief has indicated that if that cul-de-sac extension happens, that they would like to work through an emergency access off of 43 to provide an additional access point into the development. And the applicant also proposes to build all local streets to city standards of 60-foot right-of-way. Site utilities and stormwater, the applicant is continuing to work with our engineering staff on finalizing those plans related to those items. Utilities are to be stubbed to the adjacent property lines. This parcel is within the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District area, so is subject to the MCWD rules. It has been noted that there's some further discussion required on some of the pond access that is shown on the current preliminary plans that we will continue to work through. And then last of note, if you reviewed the Carver County memo, Carver County is requesting further exploration for necessary stormwater ponding for Marsh Lake Road expansion. Staff has had some discussion internally and with the county. We believe that there's adequate space available on the north side of Marsh Lake Road on city-owned outlots, which will increase in size as that road is shifted to the south. That should hopefully adequately appease their concerns. We did have some verbal public feedback prior to the meeting, as was included in your background packet. The property owner on the south side of Marsh Lake has expressed concern with hunting access, with additional public land being surrounding that lake, and potential of that being inundated with folks wanting to hunt. And then we also had some feedback from the property owners on the east side of the property, with concerns primarily related to the proximity of the farthest east house and the 7.5-foot setback to their property. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and obtain any public feedback from anyone wishing to speak on this item. If the Planning Commission does choose to move forward with recommending approval of this, staff would recommend the following conditions. So that zoning to residential shoreland PUD with R1 low-density residential underlying zoning be approved with concurrent to final plat approval and the developer adhering to all relevant shoreland zoning requirements. That all items in the staff and engineers memos be addressed, as well as any additional engineering items that may result from any modification of the preliminary plat to final plat, addressing all of the berm and buffer requirements and all pond access concerns, complying with the regulations of the MCWD, deeding the 100-foot riparian buffer to the city along Marsh Lake, as well as all required stormwater, pond, and wetland outlots, deeding to the city the required right-of-way for future Marsh Lake Road expansion, acquiring any necessary grading or construction easements from adjacent property owners, or if those easements cannot be obtained, revising construction plans to avoid the need for easement. Providing the city with copies of all HOA docs and covenants for the development, including disclosures as we discussed that would include items such as the proximity to Marsh Lake Hunt Club, future Marsh Lake Road expansion, future through street extensions, future Shoreview Point right in, right out, and any other standard disclosures. Entering into a development agreement with the city for this development, providing a letter of credit for the development, and satisfying all required city fees, obtaining all other required regulatory approvals, submitting title work with the final plat and complying with the city attorney's plat opinion, and submitting the final plat to the city within 90 days of city council approval. So with that, Chair, members of the commission, I will turn it back over to you to open the public hearing.
Very good. Thank you very much, Marty. I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this development? Yep. Sure. Yeah, come up to the podium, and then you'll be on the mic. And it's recorded at the same time. So just identify yourself and your address also.
My name is Victoria Leitner. My husband, Bob Leitner. Our address is 5985 Marsh Lake Road. We are the property owners to the east of this development. We understand development continues on as we progress in our daily lives. However, my one concern is that we have owned that property for 26 years, and we've had basically, originally there were 6 of us on the road. We didn't have traffic like it is nowadays. We didn't have the development across the road. But my concern is now with this development coming in that the property line is only 7.5 feet off of my line. When we purchased property from the Meatpackers Union back in like 2005, approximately I think 100 feet from them. And when we did it, our property line originally with the Meatpackers, we had a row of trees that kind of came down, of pine trees that came down, some on our property, some on their property. So when we purchased the land, we agreed that we would replant those trees right back down that property line. So when we did, some of them, there's a few on my property, but some on the other side. The developers have graciously agreed that they would push all those trees onto my side of the property, which is great. However, my concern is that they've now been growing and they're huge. They're huge pine trees. They're 20-some feet tall. We started them when they were this tall. And you know how trees get when they move. The majority of them will probably die in the process of this entire transition. And so with this property line of only being 7.5 feet off of our line, that puts them right next to our house, our shed. The trees will all have to either be moved. Most likely they will probably die. And my just concern is that, we've been fortunate enough to live in this area with, animals in the backyard, beautiful tree lines next to us. And now everything is being developed. And trust me, we all understand that's what the world is nowadays. It gets developed. But we would like to try to, if we could, that property line to maybe extend it a little bit more so that it doesn't feel like we are right on top of them, as we're progressing through this. Because, when I go out to the side of our shed and into my garden that is out there, I know where that line is, and there's going to be a house within, 7 feet of me. And so I would like it to take into consideration when you're doing all this planning, that possibly that setback on the ends, the end options could be pushed back a little bit more so that so that my enjoyment of having the life that we've lived in the country, which is why we purchased the land years ago, has not been destroyed now that it's being city. That's all I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So is it your preference or your recommendation to change the lot line?
If we could, yes.
And
on the east side where our home is.
And it's 7.5 feet away from a structure. What type of structure?
We have an outbuilding on our property.
Okay.
And I think our shed from the property line is approximately 15 feet. 15 feet. Our shed is from the corner is like 15 feet. So literally from the corner of my back shed, you're going to be looking 20 feet off of my shed, basically 25 feet off my shed, and there's going to be a house. And so we're just asking that, that maybe that there going to be an adjustment. Even if we could just salvage that one row of trees going down, and utilize and just keep those trees in the area, just as a buffer, as a separation somewhat. We're not asking for a lot, but we're just asking for the people who are on the road, some of our the life that we're wanting when we started there to be preserved.
Chair, can I hop in just for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Just a piece, I think, of clarification, and Ms. Leitner, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we're talking about adjusting the property line. We're talking about increasing the setback from the
Correct.
property
Yes.
line on that side.
Yes,
Okay, just wanted to
exactly.
clarify that.
And then also, another concern is, we've been on the land for so many years, but, the Marsh Lake Kennel Club, who owns all the property behind us, we kind of butted up to them. And over the years, we've been respectful that we don't go out into the area. I mean, when people who are out there who would not be there, the farmer who's adjacent to it, the meat packers really, us, and the game farm, we've all been respectful not to go over our boundaries onto the property. And I'm hoping that when you're doing all this, that there is some kind of knowledge that it's not just a free-for-all to play out in the marsh. I mean, that's where the animals live, and it seems as we've gone through, there used to be deer everywhere. There used to be animals in all the trees that were taken down. I mean, I just want to preserve some of that we all want. That's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll take that under advisement.
Okay.
And take a look at it during our discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on that development? Going once, going twice, going three times. So, hearing no additional public input, Commissioners, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'd like to provide a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second? I second. Thank you. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. The motion carries and the public hearing is closed. I will now open the floor to the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions or comments or concerns?
Actually, I have one. Marty, would you kindly bring up the slide that had the walks and trails within the development?
Is this the one you're looking for?
Yes. So is the purple, that's going to be sidewalk, correct?
Purple is sidewalk,
I
correct?
think when we first saw this, there was no sidewalk that was going to be in front of lots 1 through 5 inclusive.
Commissioner Vansky, chair, members of the commission, that is correct. That was some feedback that was provided by this commission during sketch plat. That sidewalk should be extended across those blocks, and that is now included.
Great, so we have that. Thank you. And then is there a plan to connect that into the potential cul-de-sac?
Commissioner Vansky, members of the commission, yes. If the final plans do include a cul-de-sac on that property, on the western property boundary, we would require that sidewalk be extended to that cul-de-sac as well.
And then lastly, is there thought of a trail that will be placed at some point in a future development if those, the owners to the west develop their property? Does the comprehensive plan have a trail that's thought for along the eastern edge of County Road 43?
Kara, do you have the trail along 43? I know we've been discussing that. Maybe you can provide some detail.
Hi, Kara.
The planned regional trail is along the north side of Marsh Lake Road, and then it heads north on County Road 43 to Tellers Road. I haven't seen any specific plans for south of Marsh Lake Road on 43, but that really is because that's in our further outgrowth area,
Okay.
so we just probably haven't studied it in that detail yet.
I'm just thinking about how this, beside the east entrance, does the west entrance have the ability to connect the subdivision and then potentially through that be the emergency entrance that the fire department's looking for?
Yeah, that'll certainly be something we'll take a close look at if that property to the west comes forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Can we see a slide overview of how the Leitner's issue addresses this? Can we see something that shows that better?
I think an aerial would be good.
Commissioners, let me pull up a map for you. So the parcel that is being developed is the property here. The Leitner's property is the parcel right adjacent to it here. And if I pull up the plat, again, you will see the proximity. So up to the property line, the lot would go up to the property line and with a 7.5-foot side yard setback from the property line.
Because we're allowing the 7.5 setback between all these homes, right? Is that why?
Yeah, it would be the side yard setback.
What would the normal setback be?
Our R1 standard zoning is 10 feet.
My question would be, would 10 feet make this situation any better? I mean, we're adding 2.5 feet. Does that get past the trees that have to come out or not? Do we need to go 15 feet? Do we need to go 30 feet? And at what point does it?
Well, you lose the one house, right?
Or you'd have to shift, but it's.
Chair, I think the representatives have something to say.
Hello, John Sonic with Charles Cudd, VP of Construction. As I've talked to the Lightners, I move trees every day. Just got done moving some 30-foot tall maples, and they live. And I'm willing to say, I'll move your trees and guarantee they're gonna live, or I'll replace them with 10-foot B&B trees, because it'd be too hard to get the spade in after the fact. So after 2 years, if the trees aren't alive, I'll come back in and put in 10-foot B&B evergreens to replace them. But again, I plant big evergreens all day long with the 8-foot spade. We keep the Miracle Grow and the water on them, and they do great. And so I think at that point, let's get them on the right side of the property line. And, whether we're 7.5 feet or 10 feet, which is the normal setback, the 2.5 feet isn't really going to change what you're thinking. Really what's going to help your change is to get those trees lined up so that when you're at the garden, you're not feeling the house next to you. Because we have more trees going to go in our side of the property right there also to help with that.
So if all the trees are moved to our property line, so our house would be 7.5 feet off of those trees, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so are you gonna put trees on the other side of our trees, or is that the house?
Well, there won't
So
be any
that's what I'm
trees
saying.
next to the house. The trees will be on your side of the property line so that they have room to grow. And then, but ahead, up in so from the front yard going towards Marsh Lake Road, we have trees planted in our side of the field, because our driveway is on, and they face it, your house is on the left, and the driveway goes on the right, going into the courtyard garage right there, front yard garage. So I have room next to your trees in front of the garage that helps create staggered buffer trees with your trees also. And then the only place in the front that isn't any trees is the future road right away, if Marty zooms in close enough, at the end of the cul-de-sac where we're gonna bring the sewer and water to your house and the gas and electric to your house. The city has asked that we take the tree out of that right away where the road is. So I don't know if Marty can point at that for me.
Yeah, so
That one right there.
yeah.
he got his mouse on.
So chair, members of the commission, this is the landscape plan that's currently included, the preliminary landscape plan. So you'll see, this is the area we're talking about that includes boulevard trees along the cul-de-sac. This is the tree we think probably needs to come out just to be able to have
It'll
that.
Come closer.
Come
to our
closer,
house.
move.
We're still gonna keep the tree, we're just gonna tuck
Move
it
it.
in closer to our house. That leaves the gap where the future road and the sewer and water is to not have a tree over it. Cause what they don't want is trees on top of D&Us, because then down the road, okay, somebody's gotta work on the sewer and water pipe, and it's like, oh my God, you gotta cut the tree down. Well, cities have all lived that dream and said, okay, no more planting on top of sewer pipes in that, so. But we're gonna put, 3 trees on the front of our yard to help coordinate staggering to where your trees will be. And the only little gap will be where the sewer water piece would be. But your trees currently can go in that space. In other words, so on your side of the property line, because there's no D&U for that future road or anything, we can plant your evergreens to block the view down the road.
If you move, on the back corner of our shed, you know, there's a slope down and the evergreens are coming down off of that. If you move them up onto our property, because, I mean, they're this wide.
Yeah, they're 10 feet wide.
I mean, they're gonna be touching the corner of our shed, but will they affect the back layout of our shed? You know, once you can't plant a tree there because the foundation of our shed, you're basically taking out, wouldn't it?
Well,
Taking out the
we'd add
foundation
some
of my
dirt.
shed,
Right now,
pad?
the slope off the pad of your shed is coming down.
Right.
So we add a little dirt to level that up for the tree as we'll have a bulldozer there with the tree spade, and we'll take the black dirt, because we have a bunch of beautiful black dirt in the swale right there.
Right.
And we'll build that corner up with black dirt to help put the trees up. And right where the point, because the shed turns at about a 20-degree angle to the property line. So there won't be a tree right on the corner. What we'll do is move in each side of the corner of the shed to make sure the tree has future growth room. And then there's some nice black dirt that we're leveling it out to put it in. And again, you want to protect the frost protection, so we'd even add a little bit more to plant the tree in to make that work. And that,
As you can see, the tree line.
Is there?
You guys.
Do you have the luxury of the
top,
tree, the property line showing up in this picture?
Yeah, can you not see it? That's right.
Oh, there
Where's
you
the
go.
line?
Or it's just my red-green color line, I can't see it.
So are we moving the trees that look to me to be not on your property line over?
Correct. Yep, we're taking the evergreens that run vertical up and down and putting them on her side of the property line.
And so the 4 that are up top are all on the property line and are,
They're still over the line too. So we're gonna take all the trees and put them in so they're all on their property. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the back, and then taking them up and tucking them behind the shed and following right down the property line. Marty, can you go behind the shed and just run your mouse up and down the property line? There you go. So we're gonna take those.
got it.
And transplant them in a nice orderly fashion, however we wanna stagger them in, coming down the property line there. Take the ones in the front of the shed and, again, create a buffer up front.
Question for you, since if you'd be nice enough to do that, my back hill behind my shed is all, right down below that, is all walnut trees that we planted also when we did the pine trees. And then up between my shed and those pine trees are all apple trees that we've we've planted over the years. So in order to move those trees over, all of our apple trees will need to be taken out and the walnut trees, correct?
We'd have to spade them over for you too, to wherever you'd like to put them. So we spade the apple and the walnut trees over with the 8-foot spade over to wherever you want them located, and then we spade the evergreens over to where they would go.
I have a quick question. There's no elevation change between these two lots, like a berm or?
Nope, not between, because it falls downhill quite rapidly going down to the lake. Yep. And so there's a swale between the two properties.
Okay.
To carry the water down the property line.
So is that the garden up above? Just
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, there's like a lot of action that was on across the line.
Well, it was vacant land, there's been nobody there.
I know what you're saying, I'm just.
It hasn't been farmed in probably 15 years, and the meat cutters owned it, but they were never there. So
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy has farmed it for years, and as Jimmy had it for like his hay and so forth like that, and so it was just kind of an agreement. We give him a lot of fruit, vegetables out of the garden, and we just expanded our garden, and Jimmy kind of bailed around us and picked and did his thing. And so for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, they haven't done it. But, yeah, so.
So I mean, just from a legal standpoint, if we didn't want to deal with the PUD stuff, we can move the property line over 2.5 feet or try to enforce some sort of setback. I don't know if that really satisfies anything for you. I think having them move these trees for you and help create a buffer within your yard, I know it's not the greatest situation, but that's probably a better situation than trying to do something else is, I guess, my point. I don't know if that satisfies you. It's not going to be the Victoria that you move to, or the Laketown Township, excuse me. But I think everyone's trying to make it as nice as possible.
I'm Tim Nesvold. I represent the owners of the property. The meat cutters are actually called the United Food Workers. And could you blow?
I'm sorry, I called you meat packers.
Yeah, meat cutters is what the property is under that ownership, but they now call it United Food Workers. But could you blow that up just a little bit, Marty? So just a little perspective. Leighner's been great neighbors. In fact, historically, Ray Sawicki, probably going back, I might be wrong on my numbers, but about 15 years ago, we cut off a part of this property to, the Leitner's property went up pretty tight to the house. And I believe there was, and I don't know all the conversation, but to be accommodating to the Leitners for, to be able to build a shed and to kind of have a little more space. It's not the smartest thing as owners to sell your development land, but I understand from Ray that, he said, hey, let's be accommodating and let's sell off 75 feet or 100 feet. I can't remember what the original line was, but it was closer to the home. So there was.
Basically, that telephone pole came straight, kind of basically straight, yes.
Okay, so, yeah, and I believe, and I wasn't privy to that conversation, but what I was told after the fact is that there was a sale for the land to, try to be neighborly, to try to accommodate, some additional shed. What we, unfortunately, the garden and the trees and, became, in the last number of years, kind of encroached onto the property. But so there was, from our perspective, tried to, do the right thing and give that extra section of land, even though we wish we had it back now, just from a value point of view. But and I believe it was in the spirit of being neighborly. So I thought that you folks would appreciate, knowing that that there was some accommodation for the Leitners for, expanding that. So the idea of moving the lot again becomes detrimental to the meat cutters or United Food Workers. So.
And just quick question, you were remunerated for that parcel that you were deeded. Essentially, you deeded a parcel of the existing property over to the Leitner's property.
And I wish I knew, maybe Marty has at his fingertips, but I think it was 75 or 100 feet. It was an odd section. It was when I first went to work for the guys on this quite a few years ago. I said, why is this little sliver out? And then Ray Sawicki, the president at the time, said, we sold it to the Leitners because they needed some more property for a shed, or I don't remember exactly the explanation, but it was in the spirit of accommodating and being neighborly. So we attempted to to do that, to create buffer, to create a soft spot between us, and obviously the shed and garden and all that, it kind of expanded again. So
This isn't a normal shed. This is really nice, right? I mean, this is really big. This is really nice. You may have as much issue with the homeowner who buys on the corner who doesn't want to look at the shed. The shed actually provides a nice buffer for you at your house going that way, so.
And our garden has literally been cut. We stopped using anything on the other side of the trees just this year, just because, it was going to be sold. So we quit using that property over there, just, as courtesy.
I think that offer to move the trees and guarantee that they'll be alive for 2 years is a pretty good one. That seems pretty accommodative, but you have to judge that.
And when Marsh Lake Road gets expanded, will you lose that area where the 5 trees are by the telephone pole?
We are hoping not.
I'm going to invite Kara back up to the podium.
I keep wanting to say mayor. Chair and members of the commission. The last version of plans that were developed for Marsh Lake Road start to shift the road to the north in this area to try to protect those trees. So when you look at the plat, you'll see that it starts to angle the property that we were requesting to come to us in an outlot, because the road's starting to curve to the north to protect those trees was part of the design back 2 years ago, or however many years ago that was, that the county was looking at that project. So the intent would be to preserve the trees that they have in the front of their yard. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're back to being neighborly and doing the right thing, and developing a compromise to have a solution that is agreeable.
I think this is a true statement. The north side of Marsh Lake, majority of Marsh Lake is going to be with path versus the south side, or trail, correct? So that might be part of the explanation on why, another reason why these trees are going to be able to be protected as well.
Chair and Commissioners, can I bring up one other point too, as long as we're discussing? I did note it in my presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that it was at least thought about. So as I mentioned, the property owner on the south side of Marsh Lake, Mr. Wetzel, had some concerns about public access, being able to get into this property and inundation with hunters. He had called me earlier today and was unable to attend the meeting, so I told him I would relay that information again. He does still have that concern. Staff is working with the DNR, checking with city attorney, going down a few different avenues to determine how and if or what hunting access would work or not work, or be prohibited or allowed on public property within this development, because as you'll recall, there is a large public outlot that will be adjacent to the roadway that would provide access down to the lake. So we'll be discussing that with the city council as well next week. But from staff standpoint, at least at this point in time, we are looking at ways to try and remedy that issue that would not allow hunting access through that public outlot. But if the planning commission disagrees or has a different opinion on that, please let us know. On the side of the road, in the neighborhood, who knows?
Right.
Garage.
They really don't have any good legal access to park there.
Wouldn't that be hunting in city limits?
It gets a little difficult, and this is where I need some attorney advice. But the city does prohibit hunting on lakes that are fully encompassed. That's the same information we got from the DNR, is that if a lake is fully encompassed by a city, the city can prohibit hunting on that lake. Obviously, this lake would not be fully encompassed. And again, I don't know that we necessarily want to prohibit hunting completely on that lake. There are restrictions in how close they can get to the neighborhood, just because there is a lot of property in the Marsh Lake Hunt Club that's adjacent to that property. But we do want to try to limit, if we can, access to hunting from that public piece of the property. So just an FYI, staff is still working through that, unless given other direction not to.
So from the Leitner standpoint, are you in agreement in principle on what's being proposed?
Yes, we're in agreement with it. Do we love it? No, but we're in agreement with it.
Yeah, I mean, it is our objective to make things happen, and certainly happen the right way. So thank you very much for everything. Commissioners, is there any other thoughts, any other discussion?
I just have a quick question on the pond access one more time. I'm curious, staff, would you say that if any types of boats were limited to non-motorized boats, would that potentially make an impact at all? I mean, it still allows people to have mobility, and there has to be vehicles to get them there, but maybe it limits them out a little bit more?
Commissioner Moore, members of the commission, and my understanding, perhaps the applicant or even the Leitners might be able to speak to this a little more, having lived in this area for a long time, but my understanding is that the lake itself is pretty shallow, and I don't know if you can even get a... I don't know that you can actually get a motorized boat on that lake. I think it's primarily, duck boats and canoes and that type of thing.
Hunters with waders on, going through the field.
Right, but there's no access to get down there. In other words, there's a city access to get down to do maintenance on the pond, but it's not a paved trail or nothing. It's just a 20-foot wide grassy slope that they have the ability to drive their machinery down to do maintenance on the pond. There isn't a sign that says, hey, access to the lake here. Right, so, and it'll be fully landscaped around, so I mean, I really don't see anybody pulling over on the side of the road thinking it's a good place to drive their duck boat down the hill to go hunting. And we don't foresee any of our homeowners hunting as far as that goes.
And I will just note, Chair, Commissioners, because it had been relayed to me that Mr. Wetzel has noted that there have been people that have tried their darndest to get in there for duck hunting. So again, that is secondhand from him, from a property owner. I don't know that personally, but he has relayed that to me, so I wanted to relay that to you.
A lot of people have parked on Marsh Lake Road, and I go talk to them, and they're all affiliates of the Meat Cutters Union, Jim or John or something, They figured out it was Meat Cutters land and nobody controls it, so that we've had people park there for years and
And
years.
we kind of said, no, it's
Meat
Packers land, you're not supposed to be on it, so. But they do access it off of 43, but that's usually coming off the road and they go down onto it, but normally, you cannot take a motor vehicle on it. And to wade out into the water is almost impossible, it's all mush, it's all marsh, so there's not really anything you can actually do on the water. Besides hunting.
And the remoteness is long gone
Correct.
at the same time. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion. You have there it is.
I'd like to recommend the City Council approve the preliminary plat and zoning for the shores of Marsh Lake development with conditions as presented and discussed.
Do I have a second?
Second that motion.
Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. The second item thank you very much, ladies. Thank you. The second item of discussion is item 3.2, preliminary plat, zoning and annexation for Rolling Hills South development. This item also includes a public hearing. Again, before opening the public hearing, I will turn it over to Community and Economic Development Director Marty Dole for staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Yes, we do have another preliminary plat before you this evening, this one for the Rolling Hills South development. Again, just a little background. So back in April, the sketch plat was brought before the Planning Commission on April 20th, as you'll recall. For that one, because there are so few neighbors that were within the 350 feet, we combined the neighborhood meeting with the Planning Commission sketch plat review. And then that sketch plat was also reviewed by the City Council on April 26th, both bodies providing some feedback, staff also providing feedback as well. And now the applicant has submitted a preliminary plat and zoning application as well as a petition for annexation for this parcel. And as you noted, Chair, a public hearing is required for this item as well. So just a refresher, this parcel is a portion of 10580 Victoria Drive. It is just west of Victoria Drive, County Road 11, and south of no longer proposed, the approved Hunters Brook development. The applicant is currently proposing 110 single-family lots, as was noted in your background packet. Currently, those are proposed to all be rental homes, and 103 townhome units, which would be owner-occupied. The parcel itself is 71 acres with approximately 45 developable. That yields 3.8 units per acre for the single-family portion west of Chaska Creek and 6.5 units per acre on the townhome side east of Chaska Creek, both which are in line with where the property is guided for both low density and medium density residential. As was noted, this property will also require annexation for development to be approved. This parcel is also primarily used for agricultural purposes. It does include rolling hills and some wooded areas, and as I noted, Chaska Creek runs through just about the center of the parcel diagonally here. So this is the preliminary plat layout for the single-family portion. We'll talk about it in a little more detail, but as villa lots are being proposed. As I mentioned, there are 110 single-family units. That is west of the creek. The townhome area is depicted here on the preliminary plat. This would be just south of the Hunters Brook development. And then this image provides an overall view of what the development proposal contains. So as I mentioned, there are two different product types, lot types that are being proposed with this development. The first, single-family lots. The proposal is for these to be zoned as PUD with R1 underlying zoning. These are intended to be rental villa lots, so the minimum lot area proposed is 6120 square feet, a minimum lot width of 51 feet, minimum lot depth of 120, a side yard setback of 7.5 feet, front, rear, and corner setbacks of 25 feet, and a maximum impervious surface of 60% per lot. The townhome portion east of Chaska Creek is also intended for PUD, but this one with an R3 multifamily housing underlying zoning. These are proposed to be 1,125 square feet per unit with a minimum unit width of 25 feet, unit depth of 45 feet. 15 foot setback from the public street, 20 feet from the private drive in front of those homes, 25 feet from the collector creekside lane, which comes from on the west side, and then a minimum building separation of 20 feet for side yards and 30 feet for rear. As with most townhomes, the units themselves have a very high impervious surface, so being proposed is 95%, but the area around them, as you'll see as we move on, would be maintained as green space. So as was mentioned, the preliminary plat does differ a bit from what you saw a few months back on sketch plat, in that the single family area is proposed now only to be villa products, as opposed to some different lot sizes and product types that was previously proposed as part of the sketch plat. And then there has also been the addition of a clubhouse being proposed in the single family area that would include a swimming pool and on-site parking. So moving on to the outlots, as you can see some of the open and green space here. So the outlot A would be intended to be deeded to the city. This includes Chaska Creek, includes stormwater ponding, some wetlands, et cetera, around the south and outsides of the entire development. We'll talk about this in more detail in a few slides, but there is a proposal for Outlot G to be deeded to the city as a city park. There is an open space outlot between these areas here that the city would propose being maintained by the HOA. Outlot B on the northwest side of the development includes wetland and open space, as well as a parcel Outlot C for a required city well site. And then Outlot D would include a pond and wetland that would be city outlot. The remainder in yellow here, Outlot E and F, would be the green space around the townhome units and buildings. There are, again, some buffer and berming requirements that come into play with this parcel. So first, the applicant is proposing to meet the buffer planting requirements for all double and triple fronted lots, and has agreed to include the planting requirements for a 40-foot buffer along the railroad tracks on the south side of this development. There is a proposal for a berm along the railroad tracks as well, so that would be in addition to the planting. You can see in the cross section down below how that would look in a typical section here with the railroad tracks down below, grade being built up to create that berm and back down to the trail area. And then set back to the homes here. As you will recall, there was some discussion during the sketch plat about a potential fence being placed somewhere on the back side of the berm along the railroad tracks. The applicant has expressed that they're willing to explore that and potentially look into it, but is looking for some direction from the Planning Commission and City Council as to how desired that fence would be. The applicant is proposing to retain just about 45% of the significant trees currently on this site. Their current required tree replacement is calculated as about 1,142 caliper inches. That equates to about 381 3-inch trees. And the applicant's proposing to plant 3,015 caliper inches on the site, which is approximately 1,005 3-inch trees. That includes 325 lot trees in both the single family and townhome area, 293 boulevard trees, and 387 berm and buffer trees. As we mentioned, the comprehensive plan does call for a neighborhood park on this property. With the parkland calculation, approximately 5.68 acres are required. The applicant is proposing 3.81 acres of usable parkland dedication and also requesting credit for 2.05 acres of a 30-foot trail corridor. So staff will continue discussions with the applicant to finalize parkland credit and dedication as we move forward with this plat. You may also have noted that the park changed location per Parks and Recreation Committee and Planning Commission feedback. That park is now located in that area off of the Collector Roadway in the area of that large woodland stand per that feedback. I've got a couple of slides here showing the trail and sidewalk network being proposed. So the red again would be the 8-foot bituminous trail. So a trail is being proposed on one side of the Collector Roadway as well as around the back side of the lots in the single family home area. The purple line would be sidewalk. So as you can see, we've got sidewalk on at least one side of all public streets in this area. And then moving to the townhome area, same thing. The red is the continuation of the bituminous trail, and staff has requested and the applicant has provided sidewalk on both sides in the townhome area along the public roadway. Moving on to transportation and right-of-way, the access into this development would be through Game Farm Road. This is, as you'll recall, a full access that is being constructed as part of the Hunters Brook development. The plan would be that future extension of Creekside Drive as a collector to the west as these parcels develop would provide that secondary access. And then this access point, like Hunters Brook, is subject to final approval from Carver County. There is some right-of-way dedication required along County Road 11 for expansion of that roadway to help accommodate some of the development traffic and some additional improvements in this area. Like the Hunters Brook development, staff is requiring 16 feet of additional right-of-way being dedicated, and the applicant is providing for that right-of-way. We also, as you'll recall, had some discussion during the sketch plat about the access into the development, as there's currently only a single access and it exceeds the fire department's maximum number of lots that can be accessed off of a single access. I know a lot of work has gone in from both the fire department and engineering with the applicants to try and help. Their primary concern was the pinch point over the creek, and if utilities or things were to break and the roadway needed to be shut down, that was their biggest concern. And I know that work has been done, and the current proposal includes offsetting those utilities from the street over the creek to lessen that risk. That, coupled with the fact that that collector roadway is intended to be connected in the future, has given the fire chief enough, what's the word I'm looking for? He's satisfied, we'll say that. Public streets in this development, again, are to be built to city standards, 60-foot right-of-way. The collector road is proposed at standards as well, 70-foot right-of-way. And then, as you'll recall from sketch plat, there was some discussion. The previous layout had a initially private roadway network, then a 40-foot public roadway section that staff had concerns about. The applicant is now proposing a full 60-foot public right-of-way roadway loop in this area that's then supported with private drive spurs for the townhomes. Site utilities and stormwater, the applicant is continuing to finalize those plans related to those items with engineering. Like all of our developments, utilities are to be stubbed to the adjacent property lines. This property is subject to Carver County Watershed Management Organization rules. And then Chaska Creek, as I noted, which runs through the property, is classified as a DNR tributary. And the DNR has been provided the plat for review and have not flagged any significant concerns to date. So with that, staff is recommending conducting a public hearing, and then again, assuming or if the Planning Commission does choose to recommend approval, do so with the following conditions. Approval of the annexation by the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings, zoning to PUD being approved concurrent with final plat, adhering to any shoreland requirements related to Chaska Creek, addressing all items in the staff and engineer memos, as well as any additional engineering items resulting from modifications, addressing berm and buffer requirements, complying with all applicable regulations of the CCWMO, dedicating the required right-of-way for future County Road 11 expansion, and deeding to the city all required stormwater pond, wetland, and park outlots, acquiring any necessary easements from adjacent property owners, or if those easements cannot be obtained, revising construction plans to avoid the need for easements, providing HOA docs and covenants, including disclosures to homeowners, including the proximity and impacts of the Marsh Lake Hunt Club, future through street extensions, and any other standard disclosures, entering into a development agreement, providing a letter of credit and satisfying city fees, obtaining all other necessary regulatory approvals, submitting title work with the final plat and complying with the city attorney's plat opinion, and finally submitting the final plat to the city within 90 days of city council approval of the preliminary plat. So with that, Chair, I will turn it back over to you to open the public hearing.
Very good. Thank you very much, Marty. And I will now open to the public hearing. Is there anyone in the chambers this evening who wishes to comment on this item? Anyone at all? Hearing none.
I recommend we close the public hearing.
There we go. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. The public hearing has been closed. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. I will now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Chair, sorry, before you jump in, I just want to note we do have representatives from the development team here, and we do have a presentation that was sent in, so I don't know if you want to present that or if you want to just wait for questions. So,
Might be good to present it.
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission members, my name is Matt Pavick. I'm the engineer and one of the developers on the project. We have been working on this for a number of years now. We're excited to be back here with this preliminary plat submittal. We took all of the feedback we got from the sketch plan submittal, did a lot of redesign, moved the park, and made many other modifications too, and working with staff on a lot of revisions and concurred with all of their recommendations. So it's been a good process, and we're excited about what we have here tonight. I'm here to answer any questions on site planning stuff, development-related things, engineering. Our builder partner, Ian Peterson, is here to talk about the rental component, if anybody's curious about that. We have a presentation about that.
Curious about the change from single-family owned to rental units, and you would tend to think of that with the townhomes, not the single-family villas, wherever.
Yeah, and that definitely I'll have Ian talk about that because he's an expert on that product and how that works. From a platting perspective, it's the same. You know, it's still individual lots that are all platted, pay taxes. It's all that's the same deal. It's just a different ownership structure. So, but I'll let Ian talk about that. But again, we're here to answer any other questions that you might have.
As far as the railroad tracks, I mean, the berm, and I looked at some others when I was getting my pizza in Chaska and heading back to Victoria, stuck by the train, changing cars on the tracks, and my pizza getting cold. But there's like townhomes that are right off of that at Bavaria and Pioneer Trail, and there's really there's nothing as far as any kind of safety feature. And if you Google map some other areas, you don't see anything, and that doesn't really make it right, but I do like the berm. Would a fence be kind of belt and suspenders? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be chain link or barbed wire, but, you know, it may not be a bad thing. But I like the berm. I think the berm is certainly good for the people who live there and such. But I guess I'd open it to others in terms of, because before we had talked about a fence, we were worried about kids going over and playing on the road.
Electric fence, maybe.
We get the electric fence from the other development.
That's typically animals.
I think when we first saw this, I don't think we saw a berm, correct?
Yeah, I don't think we did.
No.
I think the berm is a good solution, and if it's planted, I think a fence is superfluous to this, and it just kind of cuts up the, and we just heard people talk about the pastoral nature of living where they live, and, you know, adding a fence along there probably just goes opposite that direction, whereas this.
We'd have to have the fence like maybe on the downside of the berm.
It's the upkeep.
The only question I had about this, I don't see drainage in this trail area so that when this water comes down on the one side of the berm and out of the yards, we'd be flooding an outlot, which is the city's trail. So I see a drain tile in the other cross section, but I can't tell whether that flat part is the lot. And it seems like the drain tile there is elevated above the path. So how do we get to the point where we know that we have adequate drainage and we're not washing out what will ultimately be city land that'll have to be maintained and seal coated and paved?
Yes, thank you. We do have on our grading plan, you can see there is a small swale next to the trail. It doesn't show up on this cross section all that great because it's such a kind of a wide scale. But in our grading plan, it is clearly defined. And that was a city comment that we also refined as well as in our latest submittal. That does show a swale adjacent to the trail, so that'll collect the water.
Okay.
And then there's storm sewer within that swale to pick up the water in the swale. So we definitely have that taken care of.
Good.
I think it'd be nice to hear from the developer on the thought pattern behind going from owned to rental and maybe what the marketing for that is and if you've considered affordability within that at all, given the fact that it's rental in Victoria and we don't have any affordability.
I have one more question for you. And this comes from the representatives from the train group. I can't remember what they were, but they had concerns about this berm going up and causing Commissioner Evansky brought it up on the property owner side. They had what happens does it flood out onto our train tracks? Does it cause derailment? Do we have huge snow drifts? I'm sure you're engineering it so that it works correctly in that manner. I just want to make sure that it's addressed, and you are.
Sure, thank you. Yes, so the property line at the railroad right-of-way, we're matching in the grades at that point. Okay. And at that point, all of our land already drains that direction. The current farmland does. And so there's a ditch along that entire train track that will be untouched. So all that we're doing is just creating a higher berm, but we aren't affecting any of their drainage ditch or anything like that. So there should be no drainage concerns on the railroad side.
In my interpretation of the cross-section is that you're actually going to take 50% of the water that would come down in a normal rainfall and move it onto the subdivision side and put it into the path that we're talking about with the swell. So that just kind of, Commissioner Pedersen just reiterates my concern is that water, which was normally going into the railway's drainage and hopefully ultimately into Chaska Creek, that we would see this have adequate drain tiling so that the city of Victoria isn't 5 years from now putting in drain tile at the city's expense to deal with a water situation
The berm.
from the berm draining back and people's yards draining into that. So maybe if we could, I know that you said that you have it, and just.
Yeah, and Kara, we can bring Kara up here too. But
Okay.
yes, we definitely have looked at that, so. Anything else for me? All right, thank you.
I'm glad you moved the tot lot.
All right. Thank you, Marty. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Ian Peterson. I'm here representing Gagne Companies tonight. And I'll specifically talk about the single-family rental. We can talk about the townhomes as well. So going to walk through brief history just to get any questions out in the air. Hopefully I'll address some of them by going through this PowerPoint. But number one, what are single-family rental communities? Who's the typical customer? What does the product look like? And then we'll get into the Rolling Hills South project itself. So the best way to think about a single-family rental community is think of a Class A plus apartment space like you have right next door, and it's on a horizontal scale. So while the apartments are vertical, this is horizontal. Apartments are classified as A, B, C space. We specialize in what we call Class A plus apartment space, but on a horizontal scale. Communities are highly amenitized. It's providing a lock and leave lifestyle atmosphere, maintenance-free living, including full lawn service, snow removal. We even have the mechanical rooms designed that maintenance persons on site, furnace filters are changed every month and water softeners are filled. Throughout this, you'll see some pictures of some communities that we've done around the country. This is a brief history. Won't go through it all of single-family rental communities. So coming out of the downturn, a lot of large investment firms were buying up single-family homes individually, scattered throughout the Twin Cities metro, for instance. So they may have one in Victoria, one in Chaska, one in Albertville, one in Maple Grove. What they realized is the maintenance portion of that, lawn care portion of that, was becoming cumbersome. And so back in 2017, we entered the space with our first project in Maple Grove, broke ground in 2018. But this is just a bit of history and the players involved. You'll hear these primarily in the South, so they're big in Texas, big in Phoenix, big in Florida. This will be the 7th one here in the Twin Cities. This just compares a little bit between apartment living, single-family rental living. These slides are from a friend of mine, Brad Hunter, who's a housing economist out of Boca Raton, Florida, who does all of our market studies for us. These will indicate national statistics, and I'll speak to local statistics. But in 2020, there were about 64,000 starts for single-family rental homes across the United States. This year was projected to be just north of 80,000. By the year 2022, it's projected to get up to 100,000 and continue to grow. And the reasons for this, household formation projections are undersupplied, as we all know. Renter demographics mirror the buyer demographics. It's really, really odd, but as we continue to build these, almost a third of our renters are empty nesters, a third of our renters are what we call 40-somethings, and a third of our renters are millennials, whether that's in Nashville, Houston, Dallas, Denver, Twin Cities. So home ownership affordability is worsening, the amount of personal debt is rising, inhibiting the ability for folks to buy. Home price appreciation is outpacing income growth. Again, we get back to this is a lock and leave lifestyle, especially as it relates to the millennial generation. They're into payments. They don't really want to own, is what we're finding. They know that their next Netflix account is so much, their student loan is so much, their car payment is so much, and their rent would be so much. The advantages, again, lock and leave lifestyle, highly amenitized, maintenance-free living, energy efficient, modern design, new construction, flexibility, less upfront investment, These all have 2-car attached garages, personal yard space, and very pet-friendly. More than 50% of our renters across the country have pets, and of those, 98% of those are dogs. So we always include a little dog park in all of our communities. Who's a typical single-family renter? Beauty of it is it's a little bit of everybody. There was a Star Tribune article when we were opening our one in Plymouth where the folks sold their single-family home in Plymouth, wanted to stay. They were empty nesters. They had a place up north. They signed a 2-year lease, and they don't have to take care of lawn, don't have to take care of snow, and they can leave on Thursday, go up to their cabin, come back on Sunday night, and not have to worry. We see a lot of that demographic. We see folks who are purchasing a new home in the community, but the home's not done yet, so they may rent. We see divorcees who need to stay in the same school district, stay close, and we also see a lot of millennials. Again, these are national statistics as it relates to the folks. I will tell you here in the Twin Cities, average income for one of our typical community, taking, and I'll extract our community in Plymouth because it will skew the statistics even higher, but average income is about $157,000 for these folks. So they are renters by choice. Again, they can buy, but they're choosing to rent. We see professional athletes, we see coaches, so it's a diverse community. Really, the single-family homes look like any other single-family homes. You really won't tell the difference. If we brought up the ones in Plymouth, Woodbury, Invergrove Heights, Maple Grove, they look like a typical single-family home.
Are they slab on grade or do they have basements?
Good question. They're a mix typically, so depending on the topography of the land. We're getting ready to start one in Albertville next week, and that has 70 home sites, 29 are walkout, the balance are slab on grade. The very first one we did was in Maple Grove, and we built all of those as slab on grade homes. And then when we went to Plymouth, we built those primarily as walkout homes with a few slab on grade.
Do you know what you would plan to do here, or is it still?
I don't remember the exact mix. I think it's weighted more heavily towards walkout homes just because of the topography falling off to the railroad tracks. But of the 110, if I'm going off the top of my head, I think 65 were walkouts. So this is the townhome portion. We'll skip over that unless we want to talk about that.
Why wouldn't you rent townhomes?
Pardon?
These are going to be owner occupied, right? The townhomes?
Yeah, the townhomes are going to be a for sale product.
Why wouldn't you do rental there also?
We really haven't done attached product with the exception of infill in Fort Worth, Texas. So that was a bit of a nuance of a deal. But typically we're renting single family homes instead of the townhomes.
And Gagne's in Texas?
No, not Gagne. That's a project I'm involved with.
So Gagne here is builder. The rental side is a different company who owns it and maintains it.
So I am partnering with Gagne on the single family rental portion. They want to get into the space and
They want to build.
Say
They want to
that.
build and sell them to you and you'll rent them.
Right.
Whatever, right?
Right.
Would they be owner, could you buy a single family in there? Or are they all going to be rented?
No, they'll all be under one ownership group. Has an on-site maintenance person, on-site leasing person, and all of those homes are for rent.
Okay.
So the clubhouse we spoke about earlier, clubhouse has a common club room that you can rent for birthday parties, Super Bowl parties, whatever it may be. Has a workout facility in it. Typically, one this size will have some business space, office type space, flex space. We have game lawns, dog park, pool, putting greens, fireplace, outdoor fireplace typically. Marty covered the setbacks and the impervious surface, so I'll flip through that. What we've been seeing across the country is a high demand for single level plans. And so when we first started this out, we built about 15% of our homes were one level plans catered towards empty nesters. And so these are two plans that are single level plans. The one on the left is about 1,300 square feet. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The one on the right is about 1,525 square feet, but that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-level plan. Then there's an option for basement for the walkout lots on those. This is just a single traditional 2-story. This is some concepts for the townhome portion. And these are some of the clubhouses that we've done in the past. We already covered the buffer. So here to answer a whole lot of questions.
I don't know if you have your rents already ironed out or thought through, or maybe you could refer to Plymouth or maybe an adjacent one, just to give us some ideas of what you're thinking.
Give you, I'll answer the rents here. I'll give you a little perspective first. Maple Grove is 66 units in a clubhouse. Average rents in there are about 3,300. Plymouth is a little boutique project that's only 37 single-family homes. Average rents in there are about 4,300. Woodbury number one is 81 units in a clubhouse. Average rents in there are about 3,300 as well. Kind of mirrors Maple Grove. Inver Grove Heights is 120 units in a clubhouse. That one is still under construction, so it hasn't opened yet. Woodbury 2 is under construction, hasn't opened yet. And Albertville we're closing on next week. So here specifically, the products range from about 1,300 square feet up to about 3,000 square feet. So anywhere from a 2-bedroom to a 5-bedroom home. And rents are projected to be anywhere from 2,500 to 4,000, averaging about 3,200.
What kind of occupancy? Your occupancy rates are run pretty high?
Plymouth, Maple Grove, 100%. Never lost any during the COVID downturn. Rents. Again, these are highly amenitized, Class A plus space that, anywhere across the country that we've done them, Denver, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston. We did
rent terms are a year, 2 years?
Typically it's 1 year. We will sign a 2-year coming out of the chute, but that's the max to not lose on the upside. We limit ourselves to 10% of the units can be less than 1 year for folks who may be building a home, need a 6-month lease, that type of thing. We get a lot of corporate accounts, so company itself will lease the unit for a year, and if you're on a short-term project and you're coming in to pick a company, Boston Scientific, Target, whomever, you would stay there instead of staying in an extended stay. If you're getting relocated with that company, you would stay there instead of getting put in an extended stay. So,
I'm sorry to ask this. Remind me of your name again.
Ian.
Ian, what company are you with?
I have my own company. Integrate Properties is the name of the company.
Integrated Properties?
Integrate.
Okay. Integrate, okay.
Yeah.
So my question is in relation to the process in which the land gets entitled and you get involved. So my understanding is that Golden Valley land, they do all the entitlement and then you purchase all the pieces from Golden Valley. Is that correct?
You are correct, yes.
So with that said, I'm curious, I know that you're saying that there's a lot of good activity and you anticipate that this probably would lease well, but in the event that it's slow, let's just say worst case scenario, does this plan have the ability to adjust to purchase versus a rental, or do you have the capacity and interest in making that modification halfway in if that is the way the market is looking.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the kind of beauty of the model, is these are all platted as individual lots, individual PIDs. And so in our $48 million investment, if we miss, which hopefully we don't miss, but if we miss, then we can sell these off as individual homes. Yes.
And then they would have HOA fees to cover all the other stuff.
Yeah. So we would put a HOA on top of it before we started selling the individual lots. HOA fees to maintain the clubhouse, the pool. We do common irrigation, and so that would be a part of it if we converted to single family for sale product as well.
And the townhouses are going to be Class A plus as well, correct?
Yes. Yep.
I just, in the back of my mind, I am concerned about affordability. You know, just south of this development, there is going to be commercial land, and there are going to be businesses there. Hopefully it's flex industrial, and that's going to be a revenue source for the city of Victoria. And there needs to be affordable places for these folks to live. And this, I don't know, is that. Granted, I know that there is some apartments that are designed for the project, or, you know, zoned rather. There's higher density. But this is right beside it. This is adjacent to it. And so just that is a concern of mine. That's why I ask about flexibility. I mean, do you have the ability to do B? Does that even interest you?
To do,
Like Class B, let's just say, for to have a lower price point.
it's not a space that that I'm well versed in, and it's not a space that I would be comfortable doing in Victoria. You know, we kind of cater to towns like Victoria in terms of Maple Grove, Plymouth, Woodbury.
Yep.
So
No question,
it's not my
Victoria's
expertise.
no question, Victoria's affluent. I'm sure that's why
Right.
you're interested in this market. It's just, you know, our population is a lot of the same, and we're hoping to diversify that. So that's just something that I think.
I think, Laura, I'm kind of on the same page. I'm wondering, so we don't have a lot of rental in Victoria.
Yep.
And the rental we do have is typically not really affordable rental. We kind of struggle with that with the Met Council as a city, correct? Marty, maybe you can update us with that. And I'm just wondering, with our median income, which is rather high, would any of these even possibly qualify, even at the $2,500 rent point, as affordable units for Victoria? Because it seems like it's close, or could be close. So I don't know, do you have in Plymouth or in Maple Grove or any of your other developments, do you have any affordable units?
We do not. No, they're all market rate.
I mean, I know that apartments rent for $2,000 a month in Chanhassen. So if you could get a single family villa for $2,500, you get a nicer outdoor pool and stuff. That's pretty comparable. But I hear what you're saying.
No, and I'm not
If you want that, then
worried.
You need apartment complexes somewhere, right?
Yeah, I'm not worried about I think there is a huge demand for single level living. There are seniors that want to move out of these big homes. I think it's a great thing to bring this to Victoria, because I don't think there's a lot of options for people who are in good health but yet want to travel, and I think that's good. I'm a proponent for doing that, because I think we struggle with that, for people move out of Victoria when they need that kind of living and don't need senior living yet, but want something that's really more flexible and freeing.
Correct.
So I agree with that. I just wondered if there was any opportunity to have some affordability, because we also struggle as a city with that. And we don't have a lot of rental things coming forward, so.
What's your townhomes are gonna be priced?
They'll be in the threes. I mean,
Right,
so
which, if you think, you know, a 30-year mortgage or on a $300,000 loan in a townhome is affordable. It's just qualifying for it, or, you know, but then qualifying for rent or whatever anywhere, you know, it's less than $1,500 a month, you know.
right.
and you still have no real maintenance there. There's probably HOA fees or whatever that cover
Correct.
everything, but I see a need for it. I know I talked to a lot of people who are living in Excelsior, Minnetonka, Deep Haven, who have these houses that they're tired, they're in their 60s, and they want to go do something, and they don't want to take care of their yard and their house anymore, and they're looking at moving somewhere, and they look at, like across the street, what those rent for, and you got a single-family home that probably have a 2-car garage, and
I think Chaska has seen great success with their Del Webb community. There's a lot of demand. There's a lot of people from Victoria that will look at that, but that's ownership. It does have HOA fees, but they're reasonable. So I think there is going to be, it would be nice to have something that would be like that in Victoria, so they don't.
Yeah, and so your
It is
beauty of these, I guess the pointer doesn't work, but you'll see these garages are 480 square feet minimum, so there's enough room for 2 cars, some storage of stuff. What you'll also see is the mechanical rooms are all accessed directly off the garage, and that's designed specifically for the maintenance person not to have to disrupt any residents. They have a code to get into the garage, to get into that mechanical room, change the furnace filter, fill the water softener, no disruption to the tenants whatsoever. So if you're going to live here and you're going to go away for 3 months or whatever, the maintenance person is still stopping by, every week, checking it out and making sure. These are all smart home technology homes as well. So it's a smart thermostat, Ring doorbell, lights you can control from your phone, garage door you can control from your phone. So you pretty much know what's going on in your home at all times.
So it's reasonable to make the assumption that your marketing research has said there is a well-defined demand.
Yes, sir.
And for us as a planning commission, one of our jobs, of course, is to dissect this and say, do we recommend approval to the city council to move forward on this? And I would be interested in an overview, I think, of the marketing research. I would look at it on its surface. I don't mind saying, I would look at it on its surface, and it seems like a natural. It really does. And for various segments of our population, there would definitely be an advantage, and cost would not be a concern. So is that, obviously that's what your marketing research has found. So if we are to recommend approval, we have to have some pretty reasonably concrete idea and knowledge that this makes sense, because that's a lot of units for rental, and the geographical area either does or doesn't warrant that.
Well, I think even if you're just doing, and I asked about the rental thing too, because it's just different, right?
Right.
If you were just building these and selling these, you wouldn't have the same question, would you? You'd say, hey, wow, people are buying these kinds of units.
They are.
They're building a lot of these kinds of units.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're renting them and have the ability, if they so economically chose to flip it to owner occupied, they could. It seems like we're protected either way. These are going to be attractive units. They're going to be nice. Going to be nice development.
I think
really
it does
matter to
tick
us
a
if they're
couple
rentals.
boxes, though, in terms of the overall, the overall housing picture of the city. This whole subdivision doesn't feel like it's the place where we solve the affordable housing problem.
I don't know where we're solving though.
Yeah, that's a
We gotta-
broader issue.
That's like, we're gonna work on the parking problem in
Right.
downtown too.
So,
It doesn't mean you don't address it.
oh, absolutely, Commissioner Moore, you're absolutely right. Doesn't mean we don't address it, we just need to get focused and address it in a comprehensive way where we have this strategic vision of our city leadership to say, this is what we want, now how do we go about getting it? This does tick a box of, we've definitely heard that Victoria at times can price people out with either real estate taxes going up or large home sizes, and it allows a certain segments of the community, if they want, to stay and choose to rent rather than to take care of 9,000 square feet and an acre of property. So we moved the ball along that. So a number of these properties are going to be adjacent to the railroad tracks, are they not?
Correct, yes.
So, I mean, you're gonna own the problem when somebody says, I really hate the fact that I hear train whistles go and somebody made the decision that, we're not picking up the cost of $500,000 to upgrade the intersection, so that whistle goes away. So, I mean, I think that's something that you're gonna need to at least have on your disclosures so that when people are coming in, it will be noisy.
Absolutely. No, and the one we did in Plymouth, 37 units, boutique deal, rents in the mid 4,000s, backs up to a gun range. So.
And you have a little bit of that here on
I
the
think the
outside.
beauty of it, if you rent it,
That
if you rent it and you don't like it, you move in a year.
Right, no, exactly.
You don't have to worry about selling it to somebody else.
You bring up a great point as well. Almost the biggest variable in all of these deals is real estate taxes that we pay. And so, when we go and we evaluate where we're going and what rents can be, a lot of the deal and what we can pay for the lot, a lot of the deals don't work because real estate taxes. Now, in our business model, we've looked at all of the different parts and pieces of it, and we'll be paying real estate taxes like it's a single family home, and it still works at these numbers. So
I have a few questions. For your other communities, what kind of increases do you see in your annual rent?
Right after COVID and right after the social issues that happened in downtown Minneapolis, we saw a significant increase in the rents because literally we couldn't build them fast enough as people were moving out. I would say on average, we pro forma it at 3%. On average, we see 5%.
And then in terms of how you see, like once it's entitled, you've purchased the land, how do you envision like the process from beginning to end? Do you I mean, like, assuming it goes to plan, do you think that that's like a year, 2 years? What does that look like?
I'll bring up this. So typically, we start with the clubhouse, and during the summer, we start two homes a week. And so we deliver 8 homes a month. We pro forma renting out 4 homes a month. So there's some carry on some of the homes. So on average, we could start 100 homes a year. It never works that way because winter comes, and last February we were shut down for like 2.5 weeks of doing nothing. So in Woodbury, I use that as an example, 81 homes. We started in December, and we'll be digging the last homes, foundations, in there in the next month. So this project here would probably be a 2-year build. So on average, long-winded answer, about 50 homes a year we can deliver.
That's good to know.
Pardon?
That's if you can get product.
Yeah.
I've heard 20 weeks on cabinets right now.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
And windows are.
And so the longest you'll sign a lease would be for a year, is that right?
Longest lease we'll do is 2 years.
2 years,
Yep.
and the shortest is 6 months.
Shortest is 6 months, and that's limited to 10% of the unit count.
Okay. And so in that 2 years, if the taxes go up within that 2 years, the rent is the rent.
Correct.
It doesn't get adjusted.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just want to say I love it. I think to expand on Commissioner Evansky's point, we have certain areas and certain demographics that we're trying to address. I think this gives a legitimate addressment to the Victoria for a Lifetime community that doesn't have another place to go. So it's different, it's unique. I kind of love it. I wish I would have thought of it myself in some ways, but anyway, I think it's something unique that you're bringing to the southwest suburbs, and in concept right now, I'm all for it. I guess my other thoughts, and these are probably more staff related. Are we sure Fire Chief Hager is comfortable with this? That was my biggest problem, was having one access point to serve all these homes. And if there's one accident, one access point, are we all right with that? And
Yeah, Commissioner Pedersen, Chair, members of the commission, I know that Chief Hager spent a lot of time with engineering, spent a lot of time with the applicants to really work through and try to reduce the risk. I think that the primary risk for, again, a road closure or cutting off access would be a utility break in that choke point along the Chaska Creek. I believe that has been adequately resolved. And yes, I've personally talked to him and he feels comfortable with the solution.
all right, I mean, that's my main concern. And then this one maybe hits a little home based on what has happened this year. But with these new developments, especially south, how are we going to put, or how is the water going to be served in those areas?
On behalf of
And I know I've seen a little bit of it, but I want to make sure it's addressed.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So at the last city council meeting, the city council did approve a contract to extend sewer and water to the area. So about a month ago, we approved the lift station that's going to serve this area, but the extension of the utilities has been approved. This property does include dedicating land for a well. So we will be issuing a request for proposals for design of that well so that we can get that underway. We are, particularly with the updated census numbers, we are reviewing the water system plan. So our capital improvement plan includes wells 5 and 6, an additional water tower. So we're revisiting those with our current population numbers to see that right now the next storage facility is scheduled for 26. We'll take a look at if we need to move that up. So we are focused on that, particularly with all this development. Every time I come out here and drive around the city, I see lots more houses that need water. So we're continuing to work on that.
New developments like this, they obviously have some upfront costs. Do they lower everybody else's water bill?
No such
Not yet.
Does it just go up?
So what happens, the infrastructure that is extended to serve these developments are primarily funded through the development fees that are collected at the time of the plat, and then an additional water fee and sewer fee are collected at the time of the building permit. So those are structured such to cover the cost of those infrastructure investments to serve these areas where your water rates are really intended for the day-to-day operation of the water system.
Well, generally speaking, is this neighborhood going to be served by a well in that area, or is it going to be pumped from the current water tower, or how does that all work?
Sure. So the existing water system has been oversized and extended to serve this area. And when a new well gets added, of course, it's not going to be connected to the water treatment plant. So we'll be looking at the water quality of the well and deciding if we need to do any localized treatment. Certainly we'll have to add chlorine and fluoride at that location, but that water ends up getting intermingled with the system, so it's all connected. So it's not going to be its own standalone system.
Excellent. And then weren't we reviewing something about lawn care in this particular development being done through runoff or something of that nature? Was that
So the
different-
property to the north was looking at proposing a capture reuse system to irrigate the water.
Okay.
That's an option that's allowed to developers under the Carver County Water Management Organization rules. This developer is not proposing to use that. They have ponds and infiltration or filtration basins programmed in the Plat.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good. Any other
I have
thoughts?
I have a question, not for Kara, now these are rentals.
Yes, sir.
Is there any rental guidelines that the city requires for anything from fire suppression to rental?
Like in the development agreement, are you
Yeah,
saying in
well, or just
no EA?
right.
Commissioner Kuhn, members of the commission, that's a very good question. We do have some guidelines related to rental. It has also been it's on the city council strategic priority list from their latest strategic plan to explore potential rental licensing. So that's something we've talked about internally that probably would need to be looked at sooner rather than later, knowing that we'll have some a large rental complex potentially coming in line. So there is code regulations related to rentals, but we do not have a proactive inspection process or permitting process for rental property currently.
Yeah, typically in other places, we pay annual inspection fee for each unit.
Okay.
How many rental units are in Victoria approximately? Is it like 600? Like it's a pretty low amount compared to this.
Do you know?
Do you know in your market study?
I just know apartments, so
Just
I think
yeah.
this is 85.
Behind there.
The senior deal, that was like 55. I don't remember the exact.
I think it's
There's
a pretty low number.
scattered one-off single
I mean,
family homes.
yeah, I
around.
mean, I'd be surprised if there were
Right.
400. Do you know?
Yeah, in the comp plan, sorry, commissioners, we're just looking at the comp plan here. It looks like it's got a percentage that 9% in 2017 of the housing units were rental, so.
And that was before this, so this probably added a lot more. But there's not a lot.
A low percentage.
Marty, what are different topics that staff will need to explore to be included in the development agreement in this type of project that are different and unique?
Commissioner Moore, members of the commission, the development agreement itself probably won't be significantly different from a traditional development. I think more so it'll be reviewing the HOA documents and the rental documents in lieu of HOA documents will be a little bit different, right? Because I don't imagine the townhome portion will likely have an HOA, I would think, and the single family will have rental guidelines versus HOA documents. So that would probably be, from a staff perspective, the primary difference. But otherwise, I think the development agreement, because these are going to be platted as single family lots, all calculations for SAC and WAC and parkland dedication and those types of things will be the same as if they were owner occupied.
Typically, the biggest one is the creation of a homeowners association. If we were to sell as single-family homes instead of rentals, the creation of a homeowners association, review of the documents by the city attorney prior to us selling lots. That's usually the biggest one.
And you have to go through that whole exercise and that not being the intent?
No, there's usually a condition or a deed restriction on the property such that, it's currently under one ownership. If we were to sell off individual lots, we would have to, at our expense, create a homeowners association governing documents that would cover everything.
Okay.
So Parks and Rec would have the ball field, pickleball courts, that area?
Yep, Commissioner Kuhn, that's correct. That is anticipated to be a city park, neighborhood park.
Okay, my other question, back to the townhome impervious, do you have a calculation? I know it's like 95% for the townhomes, but for that acreage overall impervious, what that is?
Matt, I know we have that. I don't have it off the top of my head. I think Isaac's going to try to pull it up. It's on the plans. So we'll try to pull it up here and see.
I mean, just so it's kind of in a regulation that we're still under, you know, that it's not, that we have a guideline that
Right.
we're not going over.
Yeah.
in
Isaac's going to.
number of acres, but I'm sure you have it covered.
The park this is just conceptual. This is not anything but that, I assume, given the parking compared to the amenities. Okay.
Correct. And like all other park dedication, the city would do the programming, and that programming is done through park dedication fees that are paid for other developments. So there would likely be a study and a design done when that park is actually scheduled to be final and programmed.
I assume so, but I just needed to ask the question.
Any other discussion items? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion.
I'll look for
Marty's got to get to it.
I recommend the city council approve the preliminary plat zoning and annexation for Rolling Hills South Development with conditions as presented and discussed this evening.
I second that motion.
Thank you very much. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much. The motion does carry. The next item on our discussion this evening is item 3.3. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Is 3.3 Predatory Offender Residency Restriction Ordinance. A public hearing was previously held on this item at a special city council meeting. This evening, the planning commission is asked to provide recommendations on the ordinance, which will go to the city council for consideration on August 23rd. I will now turn it over to Community and Economic Development Director Marty Dole for his presentation.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Yes, as Chair Iverson mentioned, this has been an ongoing item of discussion recently, the last several months, several city council discussions, workshops, regular meetings. So we are at a point now where we do have a proposed draft ordinance. Because this is a zoning related ordinance, we are asking the Planning Commission to provide a formal recommendation to the city council. And as Chair Iverson mentioned, the council intends to consider this item at their meeting next week on August 23rd. Just kind of a little bit of background. On July 19th, the City Council held a special meeting and the public hearing to discuss potential amendments to Ordinance 414, which was the city's designated predatory offender residency restrictions ordinance. At that meeting, they directed staff to work with a group of residents that is identified as Keep Victoria Kids Safe to work through some proposed ordinance amendments. A draft ordinance was put together, and August 9th, the City Council had another workshop where they looked at the draft and discussed further, provided further direction. And again, at this point, I think we believe we are at a near final draft for that ordinance. So again, this evening, Planning Commission is asked to review and provide a recommendation. So just a few highlights of the draft ordinance as it compares to the current ordinance number 414, some of those changes that are being made. The purpose section has been revised for some additional clarity, so it's really speaking to the purpose of setting those buffer zones and a prohibition of events that may put offenders in proximity to young folks and vulnerable adults, so that purpose section was revised for clarity. There's been new definitions added to the ordinance for designated level 1 or level 2 predatory offender. The previous ordinance did not address level 1 or level 2 offenders or have any buffer requirements for those offenders. And then also the designated level 3 predatory offender definition has been revised slightly just based on state statute language. A new definition has been added for designated offense. Designated offense, as is written within the ordinance, is applicable only to level 1 or 2 predatory offenders and refers specifically to crimes against children and vulnerable adults. So the intention of that definition and the inclusion of level 1 or level 2 predatory offender is really that these buffer restrictions for level 1 and level 2 would only be applicable to those who have committed crimes against children or vulnerable adults. And that's where the designated offense definition comes in. There's been a new definition as well as buffer restrictions added for neighborhood amenities, which would include HOA pools, clubhouses, parks, things that are becoming more common in some of these developments. And then a new definition has also been added for dedicated vulnerable adult housing and vulnerable adult based on state statute language. New definition has also been added for temporary residence. Again, the previous ordinance did not address temporary residence. That is defined to include any non-consecutive stay at a specific address that totals more than 14 days in a calendar year or 4 days in a calendar month. The intention behind that is to prevent the ability for couch hopping or couch surfing where you're staying 2 days here, 2 days there. If it accumulates to 14 or more in a single location or 4 in a calendar month, that is subject to these restrictions. And then there has also been a revised definition for licensed childcare facility and public park or playground to provide some additional clarity. So as I noted, there have been additional buffer zones that have been added for level 1 and level 2 offenders who offend against children or vulnerable adults. Those are listed on the screen in front of you as well as within your background packet, being 1,600 feet for most areas and 500 feet for a library. And then there has been an increase in certain buffer zones for level 3 offenders, again, to bring all of those except for a library up to 2,000 feet. There have been some exceptions that were removed from the previous ordinance, including an exception that allows an offender who is granted a risk level reduction to be able to use any, or to not be, have to follow those buffer restrictions. There's a removal of an exception that allows an offender to live with parents, grandparents, siblings, spouse, or adult children, so those buffers would still be in effect even in those situations. There has been an exception that's been revised that the exception that if the crime took place when the individual was a minor, they are accepted from the buffer requirements, but that has been revised to note that they are not allowed to live in the same household as a previous victim. And then a section has been added speaking to prohibited activities that would not allow offenders to attend events meant for or including children and vulnerable adults. So Chair, members of the Commission, as I mentioned, the City Council is planning to consider this at their August 23rd, 2021 meeting. And we are looking for any questions, feedback, and looking for a recommendation for the Council. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Marty. I'll now open the floor to the Planning Commission to discuss any concerns on this.
So a quick question for Marty. What's the rationale for designating different buffer zones for the different levels? And would we not choose to simplify our ordinance by lumping all 3 levels of offenders into one category and having the higher standard of buffer zones so that the city does not have to weed through a labyrinth of determinations as to whether or not the ordinance was violated?
Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the Commission, I'll echo our City Attorney's comments on this from the previous Council meeting, in that we are in a bit of uncharted territory with this ordinance. So as we've done our review, many of the ordinances that were adopted back in 2017, 2018 were very comparable to our previous ordinance, and based on some of the recent circumstances and some of the requests from residents, we're we're looking to do something a little bit different. That is one of the items. There are a few other ordinances that include a separate buffer zone for level 1 and level 2. I believe the rationale behind that is level 1 or level 2 is less likely to reoffend as a level 3. Therefore, there is a smaller buffer zone area. The other caveat to that is that typically the city or any of the residents are not notified of a level 1 or level 2 offender. It's only notifications only provided for level 3. So it would really be up to law enforcement, Carver County Department of Corrections, when they're looking at placing individuals at level 1 or level 2 to be aware, and they do ask of any local codes that are in place. I don't disagree that it may be easier to look at a combined or single buffer zone, but these are provided by the recommendation of the city council from their last workshop.
I think the adjustments that have been made are good. I would support this. I think the whole city attorney thing is kind of really the gray area here. How enforceable is this? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still have the right policy that we think is appropriate.
Right, and to be clear, I'm supportive of it. I just think that we have almost duplicitous terms that make enforcement more difficult. The staff, I'll comment, I read some of the research that was done, and I'm highly laudatory of the work that was done. It was an incredible amount of effort and a lot of review. And my own view on this is bringing everybody into the category for level 3 and having the buffers set accordingly does not put us at a disparate sizing compared to other communities. I haven't seen anything in the council review or in the workshop minutes that seem to suggest that there are property owners that would have an objection to their land use being changed by the size of this buffer. So, my comment is to try to simplify our ordinances, make it easy for law enforcement to not have to make an onerous determination, and we would be within a buffer zone that is commensurate with our peers. And just overall make life easier for our law enforcement. But if we're going to move forward,
See the advantages of that. I can also see where, hey, level 3 deserves being called out.
And I would have to reiterate that, I mean, between staff, workshops, public hearing, everybody's done excellent work on this. Research back and forth. I mean, level 1, level 2, it's easier for Carver County if everybody's the same, so they don't have to really kind of question, okay, Victoria's this, Carver's this, Chaska's this, Norwood's this, Waconia's this. And I know research has been done on all that. So I'm confident that, I guess, what has been put together between the attorneys, and you just hate to have a lawsuit come back and you end up just paying out just to pay out to get out of it. But I didn't see anything really. Everything seems to be up to what was discussed at all the workshops and everything.
I followed the public hearing at the city council real closely, and then the volunteer group. And I believe one of the people is an attorney that had done some really, really good research. And there's and like Marty said, it's pretty much uncharted. At this point, the state has statutes and whatnot at the same time, but the follow-up that I did it, and then from the city council meeting, and I think it's it may seem redundant, you know, all the various different categories. And quite frankly, it is at the same time. But there was a whole bunch of compromise to make this work. I believe is really, you know, really what they were after, and it was a volunteer group that I believe did a bulk of it. Now, the comment from the city attorney, I thought was very accurate in terms of where we're at on this, which means, you know, essentially that we must do something at this point. And will there be any errors on that? Maybe, we'll find out, but at least we'll have something that we can work with, so. Any other thoughts?
My thoughts are, I just want to make sure that the city ordinance that is drafted is in no way, shape, or form in violation of any state statute, because that's where we get sued. My other thought on it, is there a grandfather clause in place for situations that have happened prior to this, or if this ordinance does go into place, or once this ordinance is in place, is that going to be enforced?
Commissioner Pedersen, members of the commission, I'll answer your second question first. Yes, there is a grandfather clause that was included in the previous iteration of the ordinance, and as is included in the current ordinance, that any this would only come into effect after the date of adoption. The Keep Victoria Kids group has understands that, and their mantra through this whole thing is that they know that they likely can't do anything about the current situation, but are really looking to try and prevent it from happening again. So there is a grandfather clause that would only take effect after this is adopted. To your first question, and again, this was discussed in quite a bit of detail during the Planning Commission workshop. I think the gray area that we've noted with these types of ordinances is that state statute doesn't give explicit authority one way or another. There is not, they don't grant the city's authority to have these types of ordinances, and they do not explicitly disallow the city to have these types of ordinances. So where authority of the Department of Corrections stop and where does the authority of the cities end? There has not been any case law. There have been some of these ordinances that have been challenged, but there has not been any case law that has created case law for this type of item, and it has not been brought to appeal, which would create case law. So from our city attorney's perspective, is there potential risk? Yes, there is potential risk with an ordinance like this, but there's nothing outrightly against state statute or illegal by having this ordinance in place.
And I just wanted to address it in this forum, but thank you very much for that. My only question on the ordinance itself is, what are events for children? And do we need to now define what those are? Do classic car nights become events for children? Or, I don't know, a parade? I don't know what would necessarily be that, and is there a chance, or are we going to start defining what is, or does it have to be approved or not approved to be an event for children? That was the grayest addition that I saw.
I think that's a very valid point, Commissioner Pedersen, members of the commission. It is not well defined in the current ordinance, so there is certainly some gray area open for interpretation there. And that, again, will be something that we'll discuss that, as well as the question about the consistency with the 2,000 feet with the council as part of our presentation next week as well.
Great. Well, and then it's just to note, somebody actually has to be harmed by the event for children event. So essentially, the Carver County Sheriff, because they're our local law enforcement, would have to make the determination that I'm going to arrest an individual for violation of this ordinance at Classic Car Night And then that would be the triggering event that would bring this ordinance into review as to whether or not the definition would hold or not. So I think I share, is it Attorney Voss that made the recommendation that, yes, there's gray areas, but the legal risk, that there has to be a triggering event to bring the risk into focus in the first place. And with the grandfathered clause, that's probably like the only area where it's foreseeable that that gray area could come into play and then create this, something that would be subject to judicial challenge. So,
which ultimately means that there will be a revision, whatever document is finalized, there will be a revision coming down the road at some point or another. Not in a bad way, but
right.
just how that does work. Any other questions, any other concerns, any?
First one only lasted 5 years, so.
You what?
The first ordinance only lasted 5 years, so.
Yeah.
4 years.
So that's the goal. Anything else on the topic? And this is, needless to say, within our community, it has really brought an awful lot of people together, and there's an awful lot of families that are extremely concerned. And my wife was on a tour with a group throughout Victoria, and she said there is a tremendous number of signs alerting everyone to the fact at the same time. So can we call that progress? I think.
I would agree.
Yeah. Anything else at all before?
I have just one question. Do we have staff, have they prepared a map of the places currently within the city that would be subject to the buffer zone? And what does that look like? Do we have, overall, like now here's 2,000 feet around the Victoria Rec Center and the properties that encompass. Here's 2,000 feet around the boat launch, et cetera.
Commissioner Vansky, chair, members of the commission, I actually reached out to our GIS consultant through Dakota County last week, or Carver County, excuse me. So she is anticipating having that map prepared by Wednesday. So hopefully we will have that included in the city council packet for next week. We believe we have, at this point in time, all of the data except potentially locations of other offenders and all of the vulnerable adult housing. So we will note that if there's any data that's missing from the draft, that will be included in the council packet, and we'll work to get that data. But we do anticipate we'll have that map ready for the city council packet for their meeting next week.
Excellent, thank you.
Anything else? Hearing nothing, no other issues, I will ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion that the city council adopt the revised predatory offender residency restrictions ordinance.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those that opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. I have some thoughts that I had jotted down. One of which I think this evening we probably got more really good questions, really good response from the public hearing, and I think that's excellent. And one of the things that I've always heard is that if you read the packet, you really can't help but go through and pull some things out. So thank you, everyone. Very good. We have you can take a look at the schedule for the next city council meeting. I've attended a number lately, And it's a, yeah, I think if there's, if you look at the agenda and you see something on there that you say, you know, that's something that I want to follow, you can do it online. You know, you don't have to necessarily, but is there a report on the last city council meeting?
There is, from August 9th, 2021. I will, would you like me to address that?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll be as quick as I can with it. The mayor started off with a statement on the crash and the horrible situation in Victoria. She did a great job thanking all of the first responders, the fire department, and everyone else who came rushing in to help save or deal with what was happening there. Second main thing that happened, Ann Helsher from the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District got up and gave her annual report on what they've been up to. And I was actually surprised with a lot of the things that they do. I'll be quick. Regulations regarding docks, licensing, safety, environmental pickup, harvesting of various weeds and things of that nature. And it was actually a pretty interesting presentation on those sorts of things and what the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District does for the lake. We moved on to Lori and Sherry. I didn't get their last names, but they're part of the Keep Victoria Kids Safe group. They answered some questions regarding broadness and some definitions for parks and things of that nature for the council. Noise allotment, I can't think of what it's called right now.
Temporary noise permit.
Temporary noise permit for St. Victoria Church on 828 for a band that's going on. Then the other big news is there's another company coming in who wants to provide us with cable TV options with MetroNet. So they applied for a cable TV franchise. Let's see, Kara got up and went over some of the things that I asked her again tonight, just to kind of reiterate and go through what was happening regarding forced water mains, sanitary sewers, and how those things are being developed. Then we kicked into 6.4, which was the Bavaria Trail East discussion. That went to a closed session. And I sat there, and 30 seconds before I was ready to leave, they reopened it, and to come up with what has happened with that, there was a counter offer regarding the purchase of the land from the homeowner or the landowner along that stretch of area for the trail, and the city council denied it. We lost a $150,000 state grant, I believe, and more or less decided that the Bavaria Trail East is no longer something that we are going to be pursuing. Finally, a couple topics. The art around here can be purchased. Carver County Fair is going on. That's over now. And then finally, the 19th is the Churchill's 7th anniversary party. Then there was a motion for dismissal, and that was it. Questions?
Thank you for attending.
I did watch it online at the same time.
It was thick. It was a lot of stuff.
A lot of material, yeah. The Bavaria Trail was one of the issues that I had been following.
I've been working on it with Ann for 5 years with the Park and Rec Board, and then this, and well, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the way it went.
That's it. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Christian. Yeah,
You bet.
it was a busy night. At the same time, staff, Marty.
Chair, just one item from staff. So the council did move Jay Nebben to alternate number 1 and appointed Daniel Elliott as alternate number 2 to the Planning Commission. Daniel has done his Planning Commission orientation, and he had every intention of attending tonight. And then late this evening, we got a note that said he had a scheduling conflict, so he was not able to attend. So we're hoping we will get to introduce him at our next meeting.
Good, excellent, thank you. Thank you. Commissioners, any other issues?
Yeah, I just want to bring up something. So, I don't know, something about this Rolling Hills South just is like triggered me. So, I want to talk about affordable housing for a moment. Is the city of Victoria talking about this subject? Are they looking at that when they review projects? I mean, obviously today, the approval was based on the preliminary plat, right? So it doesn't have anything to do with the affordability component. So that doesn't really have the place to discuss today. But city council going forward, that's something that I would hope they think through. Many cities that I work in, the developers cannot do a project without the affordability portion in their project. So I'm just wondering what you can say about that.
Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission, I think that absolutely, yes, the council does have affordability identified as one of its strategic priorities. So it is something that they have top of mind. I'm guessing that they will have the same questions for the applicant as in this project as you all did about affordability. I think at the moment that right now the focus on affordability, as was alluded to during the discussion, is likely more in the higher density areas. So as we work with Downtown West and we try to kick that first phase off in additional phases, I think there is a focus, and the city will be looking for some affordability, senior affordability, just non-senior affordability as well. So I think that is at least from my perspective, that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, of where to try and start with this affordability conversation, try to add affordability components into the community. As you'll recall, Bethesda, which was approved 2 years ago now, a year or two ago, included an affordability component, a little more density in that area. So no, we certainly have not cracked the nut. I don't know that anyone's cracked the nut on being able to solve it completely, but it's a topic of focus. I think that there is a priority to make sure that that's included as part of the Downtown West development as it continues on through its phases.
What do you think is from a developer standpoint? I assume they're bringing what they think will sell, what they can make good money at.
For sure.
They can make better money. So does the city have to buy property and do their own development? I mean, how serious do you want to address that?
Julie knows this more than anyone. I mean, this is what you did for your career for many years. I mean, it's
Typically with multifamily development, cities will say we want some portion of this to have some component of affordability based on, and it's not as difficult when our median income for the last 4 years was over $100,000. It gives us a little bit more leeway. An affordable unit really is it has a pretty decent rent. So I think you're right. I mean, we don't see rental homes coming up in this I've never seen this come up in this development. Now in Texas, yes, happens all the time. But I haven't seen it very often in Minnesota, and it's been more that they are for sale, because Minnesotans typically, if they have the ability for home ownership, it's a desired thing. And I think this is going to be interesting how this works. I like the product. I think it's a good idea. I think a lot of people will it'll resonate. It's hard at this moment to say, hey, we would like some affordability in your product when it's a single family home, $2,500, isn't going to get it. So, but I do think that as a city, we may be forced at some point to be looking at what percentage of our multifamily housing has some component of affordability. I think Bethesda is a nice start, and I think there's people thinking about it. But as the commission, I do think we need to probably think about it, and it needs to be brought forward, because we're going to have a lot of development coming forward right now in particular, and rental is going, it's going to be something that we're going to...
We lack public transportation. Mm-hmm. So when you get into those affordable options, I would assume that's why they probably tend to be closer to the cities.
And closer to commercial districts. I mean, we have a long way to go before we get the public transportation, you know, but unfortunately, I mean, you got to get the employers first to really dictate that.
But if you look at Chaska and their percentage of affordable housing is actually quite robust, considering they also don't have any public transportation with the exception of their recent Southwest Transit station. So I don't think it's, you know, it's hard to say that that's the reason, but we definitely, you know, it is harder to do as the land prices are higher. That's our biggest challenge.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is our challenge, for sure.
And cities.
Everyone's pressed. And I mean, City of Victoria has healthy fees.
Well, and before you get the Met Council forcing you to do it, you got to start planning, because all of a sudden they're going to come and say, no, you can't do this because you got to do this. And then you're behind the 8 ball because you didn't think about it 10 years ago or whatever, you know.
I think it'd be nice to start looking at studies of what the adjacent communities are doing and what percentage and what we can do, because we do have some tools as a city to help offset some affordability, and people will ask for that, in addition to the fact that there are robust ways to get financing for affordable housing and some pretty robust, you know,
You look at
subsidies.
what Carver has down right off of County Road 11 and, you know, 212 there. They got a metro station. I mean, you know, and maybe it's somewhat approaching Southwest Metro. What their plans are.
I thought I read that so many of those Southwest Metro stations are empty. They spent tons of money on them, and they don't have the ridership. And of course, now you got people working from home. So
Right. That's the whole
But even
thing.
before that, they spent a ton of money on all those stations.
Oh.
And they're largely unused.
We'll see what happens in Eden Prairie when they open up the,
That's going to be.
Well, right, when they connect.
because that kind of changes.
That's the whole connection, is getting people on buses to light rail to downtown. But I mean, somewhere between here and Waconia, you'd think there's going to be something.
Do we have the ability to kind of control where these, let's just have that, there's more future rental single-family units. Do we have the ability to guide that into different areas so it's not like this huge, big swath of development that just keeps going?
Commissioner Moore, members of the commission, I think just in general, the planning commission and the city council would have some ability to try and guide that, just because all of these are coming through as PUD. So that gives a little bit more teeth from the planning commission and the city council to be able to approve or deny based on some of those standards. So I think that's likely what would give some of the authority to help try to guide those to different locations. Again, it depends on density too. You know, it does need to meet the comp plan guide. So there are low density residential areas guided, there are medium density residential areas guided, there are high density areas guided in the comp plan. So depending on the proposed density of the project, that would be another component that would be considered.
I'm actually surprised that, that the city hasn't received a proposal from someone on affordable housing.
Developers don't love it.
They
It's
don't
hard.
love
It's challenging.
Well, and typically you are going to see more, like as a developer, if I'm building affordable housing, I'm going to go where the greatest need is. And so they're building in Minneapolis and they're building in those areas because that's where the higher needs are. So you don't, you know, it's kind of like, does the need come first or does the affordable housing come first? And it's chicken and the egg. We're in the same situation, but it is something that, you know, I think that we have people who grew up here and then get out of school and have their first career, and they would actually qualify for some affordable housing with, you know, a $60,000 a year job, and they would maybe like to live back where their parents live. And so we're going to see more of it, I think, coming around as Victoria grows and becomes
If you can get the kids out of the house.
more of a destination. So there's the thing, they're all in the basement. So
Or it's free. It's super affordable.
What percentage of your projects need governmental subsidies?
It just depends. We do ones without government subsidy. I've done many projects with no subsidy whatsoever. And then I've done others that have gotten, trust funds from Minneapolis and many other, and I've cobbled together 63 sources of funds. So it just depends, what the project is and how much the rents are and how much land. I mean, there's so much. But you can say, like, if we had a market rate apartment building come like this one, you could say, okay, 2 to 4% of these have to be affordable units to be in Victoria. And most developers, if it's a reasonable amount, can do that, especially with our income being so high.
Right. I think that's the kind of conversation I'd like to see we have more of.
And people think affordable housing typically, a lot of affordability is 50 to 60%, and you're going to find those are young professionals. They're, I think
So we're not going to
particularly in Minneapolis.
running around out here.
No, in Minneapolis, there's Mill City District apartments that are 100% 50 to 60%, and they are, I would say, 80% of them work at the corporations downtown. That was right across from one of the buildings I did, and we were in partnership on the development. It's a great place to live.
Good, very good. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Laura. It's very, very relevant. Anything else?
I just have something that we don't need to talk about today. I'd like to get it on maybe a future meeting when there's not a lot else going on. So obviously we've gone through our water restrictions. What are we doing to guide people, developers, to maybe put in more drought tolerant landscaping? I don't know that, you hate to say, well, we're in this drought now and it's going to be like this forever. Hopefully not, but it could be a pattern. And I looked at like the Charles Cudd, and you see, we're putting in Kentucky bluegrass, which, hey, is great in the shade, and everybody likes Kentucky bluegrass, but you got to water it a lot. So is there something else that we should be guiding people towards to help reduce our water irrigation load?
Well, and in one of my farm publications, there was a statistic that I just read last week. So in the last 10 years, we have lost 11 million acres of tillable land to suburban sprawl. So every one of those acres are no longer productive from the standpoint of, corn and beans. And that's land that is now being irrigated, and cities are being built. So, we can always say, well, there's plenty of land and there's plenty of water, okay? But that's not necessarily true. So, yeah, I think that's a very good point, and I think it's very reasonable. I can look at our own neighborhood, and boy, there's an awful lot of water, and water is a pretty valuable commodity. So the issue that should be addressed. I do agree, very, very, very much. And anything else? Hearing none, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Guess we don't need the sunglasses anymore.
So what is that beeping?
Do we need to all in favor say aye?
No, there's
Aye.
beeping out this.
I was going to say, wait, I think this is you.
Commissioner.
Wait,
Goodness.
Non-planning commission related.
I missed it on the miscellaneous section. In front of you are ballots for the People's Choice Award for